Gary Danielson. Gary, how are you?
I'm doing great.
I got to say, I'm a huge fan. I love your work. I think you do tremendous – you provide insight, which I think is the job of a color commentator. I'm interested – I'm sure you face a lot of backlash wherever you go. And I always get in arguments with fans on Twitter that if everyone thinks that you dislike their team, you're probably doing
All right,
the right
I'll
job.
tell you a good story. It was this year. I live in Florida, and I was I have a regular massage like twice a month, and my girl wasn't there, and they said we've got a substitute for you, and I said okay. So I go in there, and she goes, "What's your preference?" And I go, "Pretty firm." And she goes, "Good." And we're talking, and she goes, "Have I ever given you a massage?" I said, "No, I don't think so." She goes, "Oh, your voice sounds familiar." And then she's doing my neck, and I'm laying down, and I go, "Well, you might have heard me on TV." TV? And she goes, "Yeah, I do the SEC." She goes, "Oh my God, I know who you are. We hate you." And she starts getting, I go, medium. I start yelling. I go, "What do you mean you hate me?" She goes, "My mom hates me. If she knew I had my hands on your neck right now, she'd want me to kill you." I go, "What?" Like that. So it goes with the job.
Yeah, one of the clear points where I remembered how I just knew the moment that you were as good as you are was the 2009 Alabama LSU game. You called the game-winning play before it happened when Patrick Peterson went off the field. How much time do you spend studying tape before you do a game?
Well, a lot.
Yeah.
Not like a coach or not like a quarterback when I was preparing in the NFL, where you live it. But you're watching 2 or 3 games, but a lot of it is just instinct too. All great play callers have a sheet that they start with, and Bill Walsh told me this too. I mean, you have what you're going to call, but then you got to let the game have some influence on where you go with it from there. And when you're preparing for a game, you can prepare all you want, but you don't know Patrick Peterson's going out of the game.
Right.
So you have to use your instincts. You can be, how do I phrase this? You can study all you want, and I cannot guarantee you'll be a good analyst for football.
Right.
But I can guarantee you if you don't study, you'll blow. I mean, it's impossible to do it. You got to do your homework, okay? But a lot of it is you've got to have some courage because people are not happy. They're used to listening to their home guy, and and you have to have some guts to say some things. And what I try to do is I try to be as tactless as I can. And I signed up for this. 11 years ago, I knew what I was getting into. I knew where I was headed, and the intensity of these games is what I was looking for.
Yeah, I always love listening to you broadcast because I feel I learned something, which I think is a trait of a good color commentator, and I think you do that wonderfully.
Well, you have to go into a game with some ideas of how you think the game will unfold. Part of it is salesmanship. Part of it is entertainment. Part of it is that that your people that are watching, it's a very important game to them. And we're doing a key game every week. I mean, when the B game or an ESPN game, when there's a controversial, and I had conversations with Steve Shaw about this all the time. I go, "Are you as mad at the other commentators when they miss a call?" And he goes, "Well, their game doesn't matter as much as yours." I mean, am I a big blown call or a controversial call in the game I'm doing is huge. So I think, you go into these games and you have to be prepared for the outcome, but you have to be able to ride it out, and then understand that people that are watching don't see the 22 people moving in the shapes that I do, and it's just a little bit easier now. Putting that to words is the trick.
Yeah, talking to Gary Danielson, the color commentator for CBS.
Can I add one more thing
Absolutely.
to that? When I get done with a game and I listen to it,
Really?
I'll review it. Oh my God. I mean, I'm never happy. I mean, there's 100 different things I wish I would have said, or I didn't. How could I have said that? That was dumb. It's live TV, and we do it well. But boy, there's 100 different things I would like to have said instead of, or phrased differently. But that's kind of how it goes.
As a fan of football, and certainly growing up here in the SEC country, I took a lot of pleasure watching you in Vern last year. It was kind of his farewell tour.
It was great.
How will you remember him?
Well, as a much more important icon of this league than maybe for a long time people thought. I think the last 2 or 3 years, I think people realized how important he was and the importance of that CBS 3:30 or 2:30 game, depending on what time zone you're in, has this network built. And having his voice, that trusted voice there, the regularity of it, knowing it was coming on, familiarity, and his strong character, I think we meshed very well. I think Brad and I will mesh just as well. We've done a lot of games together. We've worked 7 years together. I was really happy that the person who replaced Vern was of such a stature that he deserved that job, because I think it's the best job in college sports.
Yeah, I loved how you guys let Vern in the Army-Navy game. I've watched that 10 times. I loved it. You mentioned Brad Nesser. It's funny, you mentioned your massage. I was at a bar in Tuscaloosa one night, and I heard this familiar voice, and it turned over, and it was Brad Nesser. When you hear someone that you've grown up listening to, it's always fun. Specific to Alabama, what kind of growth is reasonable to expect from Jalen Hurts this year between freshman and sophomore year?
It has to be better. I'll tell you another story. There's nothing I get asked more in the 11 years that I've been doing this, just because we do a lot of their games, than people coming up to me and say, Gary, say it, Roll Tide. And I go, I really can't say Roll Tide. You do know that, And they go, yeah. I said, but I will say this. How about if I say, throw the ball to O.J. Howard? And they go, yeah! And I think there was part of that eventually caught up to Jalen Hurts, the play calling. They couldn't make first downs against Clemson to keep their defense off the field. And one of the things, and I kind of kid the rest of the coaches in the league, because they always say the way to beat Alabama is to play the hurry up. And I go, really? If Alabama's defense can't hold up with 100 plays, how do you think your defense is going to hold up if you run? I don't understand it. Spurrier beat them the way, and I think LSU beat them the way you have to use the time, keep their offense on the bench, make first downs, highly efficient with your quarterback. That's how to beat them. Now, Clemson was extremely talented. I think they had 15 guys drafted the last 2 drafts, and they had a number 1 quarterback, and they're playing against a true freshman quarterback. It was a perfect storm, but frankly, I thought Alabama blew the game, if you didn't want to be truthful.
And to your credit, I think you were the first one that kind of came up with the recipe of the quarterback being the main ingredient to beat Alabama.
It's not – listen, all tactics work. We all do that. But I do think that play – hey, John, I think the play when Nick Marshall threw the touchdown pass on the RPO where he broke and broke their back with the – I think that changed the league's idea of how to beat Alabama, and I don't think with great consequence. I think if you ask me the biggest difference I have coming into this league in 2006 to now 2017, nobody's happy. Yeah. There's not one fan base in this league that's happy right now. And there's frustration they can't play with Alabama, and I can promise you, you can take all the fancy tactics that you think work. Yeah, they're effective. You can win a game doing that. You can get hot and have a few drives. But the way to beat Alabama is you got to be as tough as them. You have to have precision like they do. You have to have the talent that they do, at least on your frontline guys. And you have to be efficient. And that's how Spurrier and those quarterbacks, when you get a hot game from your quarterback, you got to have a chance to beat them.
Wrapping up here with Gary Danielson, who's entering his 12th season on CBS, SEC on CBS rather. When you look at the SEC this year, I don't know that it couldn't have gotten any worse last year with the quarterback play. What do you expect this year from quarterbacks?
Well, I think it's a double-edged sword. It's funny you say that. When I came in the league in 2000, I had just been in the Big Ten and the Big 12 doing games. And I just had Breeze and Brady and Sims and the Heupel, and I had just seen all these quarterbacks. And I turned on the tapes from the 2005 season. I call my buddy. I go, "Oh my God, there's no quarterbacks in this league." Now, you come to realize it's a double-edged sword. It's a little bit not equal, but similar into the NFL. Whereas the NFL, if you're not really good, the defenses in that league expose you. I was one of those guys. I was a journeyman quarterback. When I played against Marino or Fouts, I knew we were at a big disadvantage. He was an elite quarterback. It's very similar in this league. you can't be average and be good in this league. Other leagues you can. The defenses aren't as good, but there's so much talent. This year, however, there's so much talent that went into the NFL. The defenses are not the strength of the league this year. The offenses are. So you're going to get experience. You're going to get not as good defenses. So I do expect, but don't sleep on the running backs either. This is going to be a really strong league for the running back in this conference too.